Welcome to the Mendoza Podcast, financial talk that makes sense. I'm your Illinois State Controller, Susanna Mendoza, and I want to help answer all the questions you have about money matters, but we're maybe afraid to ask. We're going to learn a lot and have some fun together. Hi, we're back with another episode of the Mendoza Podcast. Today we are focusing on buying and selling a home. Getting your house ready to be sold can be a lot of work. So we're going to explore what you absolutely need to do to get market ready and what you can maybe skip. We'll also look at the steps of buying a home, from researching listings online to taking out a loan. Our guest today is someone super fabulous, Rebecca Thomson, National Vice President of Learning and Development with Coldwell Banker Realty. Rebecca, you know I'm a huge fan. I know so much about you, but why don't you share with our viewers a little bit about what you do as a realtor. Tell us a little bit about your career and what you're working on right now.
Well, I have been in this industry for over 2 decades now. And so real estate has been...
Straight out of the womb.
I love that. Thank you. Well, so, 2 decades in, and I have done everything from actually working with clients to my current role. I am in charge of learning and development for all 50,000 plus Coldwell Banker Realty agents across the country.
Wow, that's a lot of agents.
It is.
50,000.
It is, but I have lived downtown. I'm actually a past president of the Chicago Association of Realtors, and so this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm excited to get into it.
Well, I should start by saying people might wonder why I think she's so super fabulous, but full disclosure, Rebecca Thomson was our realtor, my husband and my realtor, when we were looking for our home. So I always want to have really great guests on our show, people who really know what they're talking about. And you know I'm your number one fan. I can speak from experience as to how amazing she is as a realtor, and so that's why you're on.
Thank you. Well, the feeling is mutual.
Well, thank you. So it's been how many years now, since you sold me the house? Well, since you helped us find our forever home, as I like to say, was in 2013, right? 2012? 13, yeah. Because it was we moved in exactly the day before our son's first birthday.
Just in time.
Just in time, so perfect. All right, so let's talk first about the market in general, right? The Treasury Secretary said this week that the U.S. housing market may be in a recession because of high interest rates. So that's not fun news to hear. But how has the housing market been specifically here in Illinois lately, and what are the mortgage rates as well?
Well, let's start with how is the market. And of course,
Yes.
Illinois is a big state, and so I'm going to give the caveat of every market has its own nuances and differences. But overall, we've been going very strong here in Illinois. We did not have some of the bubbles that some of our coastal counterparts did. We have been steady gains year over year, and so right now we're seeing home sales are up about 4.6%, and we're seeing actual home prices are up over 3% year over year. So Illinois realtors looked at the whole state. We're seeing that growth. Now, interest rates.
Where are you seeing the most of that growth, though? Just curious.
Well, one of the interesting pieces, downtown Chicago has been where we're seeing a lot of activity. Inventory is down 22%, and so what this is still creating in Illinois, and definitely Chicago as well as some other pockets, you're still seeing a very competitive market. So while nationally people are looking at it and saying, hey, there's some spots where it's not quite as hot as it used to be, all of the other indicators we're seeing in Illinois it is still a very competitive market.
Yay. And you know what? I tell my friends who live on the West Coast, I have some friends from the West Coast, literally one of my dearest friends lost her home during the wildfires. And she only had made 2 mortgage payments on it. She had gotten married a year ago. They bought this beautiful home together, and 2 months into it, her house burns down to the ground. And right now she's living with her mother and with her husband, of course. But the point is, I told them, just stay away from the coast. Come to Chicago. We've got amazing properties here in some of the most beautiful parts of the city that are a fraction of the cost of what you would, have to pay in California or in New York, and we have so much more going for us as a city. I just think that a lot of people fly over Chicago and they don't realize what an amazing market this is.
Oh, absolutely. It was funny. When I was in grad school, we had people visiting from, quite frankly, all over the world for class that would fall in love with the city.
Of course.
And seeing since the pandemic how we've seen foot traffic pick up. The marathon was just a crazy weekend, people everywhere, and they fall in love with our seasons, our food. I'm all
The
about
best.
restaurant
We're
scenes.
foodies.
Yes.
We are friends, everyone. Full disclosure.
Yes, and it's all of those things that really create this full picture life that I think continues to attract people here.
This is the greatest city in the world, isn't it?
Hands down.
I mean, like you and I have had the opportunity to travel to other places, other cities, and taste all the foods. And you and I always talk about, we could have our own episode here about foodies, right? That would be
hands
you
down.
and I. But like how so many of our experiences in life and some of our happiest moments, they aren't necessarily about the physical geography we've been in, but the food that we've eaten while you're in those spaces.
Absolutely.
And they bring us back. They transport us back to that country or that moment. But Chicago has all of it.
Oh,
I mean,
hands down.
everything. Like every nationality is represented in our city, and I like traveling to other places and wondering if that food's actually going to taste better than the stuff I get in that ethnic community, let's say, in Chicago.
Hands down.
And
Hands down.
it's like we'll give anybody a run for our money. But that's why people should want to live in Illinois, because we are such a diverse state. We've got everything going for us: rural, suburbs, city, right, and multiple
Very much.
cities, multiple
Absolutely.
suburbs, and multiple rural areas. So the market looks pretty good, you're saying. And what
Yes.
about mortgage rates?
So
Where are they
mortgage
now?
rates, we have seen they have continued to tick up, although we have some moments of reprieve. Here's the big picture. When we look back, not too terribly long ago, these would still have been seen as phenomenal rates.
Great rates, right?
Exactly. And there was at one point in time a lot of buyers that were waiting for something to change and then to go back down. And we've seen enough trends where they've been stable, or there's been some ticks up, some ticks down, and there's
But nothing major.
Nothing major. And we kind of joke, if you're thinking about purchasing a home, you marry the house, you date the rate. And what that means is the rate itself shouldn't be the primary deterrent in whether or not you're engaging in buying the home that makes sense for you. And if rates improve, you have the opportunity to refinance, but it's most important that you're finding the home that fits your financial needs, but also your long-term needs.
Wow, that's great. I like the marry the house and date the rate.
Oh, yes.
That's good. I hadn't heard it before. I'm going to use that now. Yes. So now I want to start with selling a home.
Yes.
Right? Because that's, I think, super stressful for people. There's lots of reasons why people will have to sell their home. But when is the best time of year to sell a home from a strategic perspective?
So what you will hear people say, and it's not necessarily a myth, there's not truth to it though. Springtime, we do tend to see an uptick in activity. So a lot of people say, I'm going to list my house in spring. Here's the challenge. If you're always waiting till spring, sometimes you can miss the market and win in spring. There is no time that is too soon to start talking to a realtor to say, here's what I'm thinking of doing. Here's where I'm planning to go. Are you relocating? Do you need more space? I joke, if you find out you're having triplets and you currently are in a one-bedroom, that's not a good long-term plan.
It's time to move.
Yes.
Yeah, start looking.
And so instead of waiting for the spring market, it's figure out what makes the most sense for you. And sometimes it's people have a very specific thing that they're looking for. And they want to find, that perfect home. So the time you want to then be putting your home on the market is then. But there's a lot of steps that anyone who's thinking of selling will want to take before having their home market ready.
All right, and so that makes a lot of sense, obviously. But so let's say you're thinking about selling a home, but you clearly know that there are a few things that you need to do around the house to get it ready. So what should people definitely take care of, and what has, in your opinion, the best return on investment? Right? I'm talking, painting, landscaping, maybe a new roof or a furnace, things like that.
Well, I'm going to surprise you and say it's actually not the new roof. Reason being, when people look at photos online, they're not photos of the roof. Now, landscaping, yes, because curb appeal matters. Of course, for those of us as we're coming into winter weather, snow doesn't always do a lot of selling for you, but people love a good kitchen. People love really things that look turnkey.
Yeah.
And so when they're thinking about what are the things I should do, the first easiest, cheapest thing to do, it's free, declutter. Especially if you're already planning to move, we always collect a lot of stuff. So the first thing you want to do is start to pare down the stuff that you don't need. And especially if you're thinking of putting it on, during a specific season, maybe keep the stuff you need around for that season and the next. But if it's summer, you don't need your winter coats.
Ditch it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other other piece, and I love doing this, so often we are in our own homes seeing the same things all the time. When my husband and I got ready to list our place a number of years ago, we didn't realize until we were about to have our first showing, we had a Post-it on the door reminding me to bring my phone, wallet, and keys. It had been there for years, and I would always forget my phone, wallet, and keys because I didn't even notice it. And so it's
that's hilarious.
Like that's a kind of extreme example, but it's so often we see the same things. And so a fun exercise, if you're thinking about selling, is to pretend you're the realtor, you're taking somebody on a showing, and either take a friend or talk to yourself, whatever feels most comfortable, but walk around. Now, what are the things that you're really excited to show off? What are the things that you're embarrassed or shying away from or you didn't realize? Those are the things to start addressing.
That's awesome. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take your advice and do that even though I'm not thinking about selling. I'll make my husband very happy, right? Because David and I have a great dynamic, but he's a little bit tidier than I am, right? So I admit it, honey. But what I'm going to say is, like, if you actually have that approach about your house in general, right?
Yes.
You think, like, what are what those things are that, like, get under your skin or under your spouse's skin. And it's just a matter of, like, keeping things decluttered is just great advice, whether you're planning to sell or not.
And the other piece, if you're thinking about it and not even sure if you want to sell yet, some of the things we're talking about, so kitchens, bathrooms, things that are aesthetic, changing paint colors, not, no bold, crazy patterns or colors.
Yeah.
Some of those things, I think they've made the right call, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish you had done it sooner, that you put in a beautiful new kitchen just to sell the home. If you're thinking about doing it, get to enjoy it a bit first.
Totally, 100%.
Because
don't wait till you're ready to move to, like, give yourself the kitchen you dreamt you would have had. So if you can afford to make those improvements, make them as soon as you can so that you at least have the luxury of enjoying the money that you put into the home before you give to someone else to enjoy.
But there's also some interesting programs, and this is why you want to start talking to your realtor as soon as possible. Like our company, Coldwell Banker, has this program called Revitalize. And so this is, hey, I'm getting ready to sell. Instead of being your own contractor, you can basically bring somebody in to figure out what are the highest ROI things that you can do. It's not going to be the roof.
Yeah.
But what are the things that are going to make a difference? And there are those opportunities in a number of places. And so it's really about starting to have that conversation early, talking about the myriad of possibilities, because programs like that, they're not putting cash up front, it comes out of the proceeds. And so, as everybody's watching their bank accounts, watching their wallets, you want to be smart about how you're positioning it. Buyers don't want to inherit a lot of work. Now, there's a small pool of buyers who are looking for a deal, or sometimes looking for a steal. And the thing is, as a seller, you don't want to position yourself as the deal or the steal. You want to be a good value, but because it's quality. And so that's what you always want to lead with when you're getting ready to sell.
That's really, really great advice. So Rebecca, on that issue of whether or not you make those upgrades, right?
Yeah.
Is it better to make the upgrades yourself, or like before you sell the house, or should you offer an allowance as part of the deal, right? The sale itself. Like if you don't, to your point about the roof, right? Like there's a lot of people who say, obviously I need a new roof, but take that off the cost of the house because I need a new roof. And that's like how people negotiate. But like, is it better to do the kitchen beforehand or give an allowance for somebody else doing their own kitchen?
It's a great question because there's two distinct schools of thought. My opinion comes from, of course, do what makes sense for you. So if it's, let's say a family member has passed, this is going to be an estate sale, nobody lives nearby.
Sure.
Well, that might be too much of a lift at this point. But most buyers are looking to take on a mortgage and they want to move into the home and have it ready. And so when they're doing that, giving an allowance doesn't actually allow them to build in the cost of that beautiful new kitchen into the full purchase price. So it actually changes what a buyer's purchasing power might end up being.
Gotcha.
Also, people don't always have time or energy, and even more so don't have the vision for what it can look like. They see what it is, and they don't see that possibility or potential. And so by creating that, now one way around it is, let's say, I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the funds, I would rather just give you a credit and let you make it yours. One potential option is virtual staging. And you will see if you look online at photos of homes, sometimes they will say a disclaimer like this is virtually staged. There's a lot of AI at work, but it will help change. Maybe there
what
is
it could look like.
Exactly. So instead of the lime green kitchen cabinets that you have, okay, this is what it would look like if you repainted them or if we redid something, because it's focusing more on the bones of the place than it is on the finish level.
It's important, though, that people know that they're looking potentially at AI, because otherwise it's kind of like dating, where you put the like fake profile picture.
Absolutely.
And you're so not at all what you thought you were going to go on a date with, right?
And here's the other thing. On the sell side, you should actually have some bids for what it's going to take to get to that place. On the buy side, you should be doing the same. Just because somebody says, oh, you can do this for $5,000, can you?
No.
And is it actually what you'd want?
Right, no, you're right. So it sounds like more so than not, you should probably get your place ready to look as pretty as possible before you put it on the market, because that'll get you the most amount of people also interested in making an offer.
Just like, okay, when you look online and somebody's photo doesn't look like who they are, people are looking at photos of homes before deciding whether they're even interested in seeing them.
Right.
And so if your photos are not compelling enough to get somebody off of their couch, off of their phone and in front of you, the likelihood of them buying it drops dramatically.
That's true. I mean, if I saw some dude who was like, I mean, by the way, I'm very happily married, as you know. My husband's super smoking. I love him.
He's fantastic.
But if I were single and on the dating websites and I saw some, dude that looked like he needed a lot of work.
Yes.
I don't want somebody to try to convince me to, go on that date because I can, make it like a makeover amazing. Not going to happen, right?
Exactly.
No offense. I mean, personality is important. We have to say it is, but
nobody wants a project like that.
On this podcast, Rebecca. Yes. No, it's people, how they are on the inside that matters.
Yes.
But no, all kidding aside, like if there is this element that you want to do the least amount of work as possible, and you want it to be turnkey ready, which is why the house that we ended up going with was one that was basically turnkey ready.
Absolutely.
Versus the one that we almost bought that required a lot of work in Saguenay. Remember that?
Exactly. And you had an almost 1-year-old. There is a lot of life going on. And so, well, again, a small subset of buyers might appreciate the flexibility. Most people have very busy lives, and part of the excitement of buying a home is this is going to be my new life.
Yay.
Not I've done all this work to get here and I've spent all this money. And now, exactly. And the other challenge is sometimes when you start something, you find out it's going to get more expensive than when you planned because there was something unknown or something changed. And so this for the buyer gives them the peace of mind of certainty. They can always change some little things later, but they can know this is done. They can be confident in being able to just move in and live.
Yeah, for sure. So now, walk me through a little bit more about how to get ready for selling your home. I mean, we already talked a little bit about decluttering.
Yes.
But that means not just moving physical things, but I think it's also when you do want to, you might want to change out a carpet.
Yes.
These are things that aren't a ton of money, but can actually help you sell your home for a lot more.
Absolutely.
And the return on investment is
clean
huge.
The carpets.
There you go.
And so if you're saying, hey, I'm not sure if I want to pay for new carpeting, look at it with a fresh set of eyes or take photos. I know this sounds silly, even on your phone. Take photos and find a home that's in your neighborhood, in your market, that has either sold or is listed and you feel like you're comparable. And if you were a buyer, side-by-side photo of how does your kitchen look, how does their kitchen look. And you can start to see where there might be opportunities for improvement. And again, you can start at a very basic level of, okay, I'm going to steam clean first and see if we can salvage it.
Yep.
But beyond that, there's definitely lots of things you can do. Odor is definitely, if you have pets, I'm going to say for our cat lovers out there, I hear you, I feel you, but definitely if somebody is not a cat lover and they come into a home with any pets, but cats especially.
I'm super allergic to cats, yeah.
Allergies, fragrance, all of that is something that can really distract. When somebody's excited to see a place, initially they're thinking of all of the reasons they want something. And when they see a lot of homes, people end up just thinking of a specific characteristic or feature to describe the home and how it ranks. You do not want to be the smelly house. No one wants to be like, oh yeah, I'm the smelly house down the block.
Yeah, good point. Seriously, yeah. You want them only focusing on the really cool aspects of the home and not talking about the ones that took their breath away in the worst way possible. Yes.
Well, and the other piece is you want them to be able to envision themselves.
For sure.
And so part of that is depersonalizing.
I was just going to say, that means I know we're all super proud of our kids and about all of our awesome travels. Yes. Don't have that stuff all over your walls and every trinket that you acquired over the years. Like, this is not the time to display it because those are yours and you're very proud of them and they'll look great in your next home.
Exactly,
but
yes.
These people want to live in their home, right? So people that come to your home, they want to imagine themselves what their photos would look like and not having to superimpose them over yours.
Exactly, because the way you live in your home may or may not be the same way they're going to live in theirs. And so it really allows them to kind of like mentally imprint themselves on the space. Yep. Because when you're deciding, is this my place? Like if you think about if you've looked at a model home, anybody who's been in new construction, or you look at a magazine, people's photos are not all over those pictures. You fall in love with the idea of it. Yes. And so it's just making sure, it's not to say that your children are not adorable or that, grandma is not wonderful, but it's distracting and you want people focusing not on who you are, but on how your home could be for them.
Yeah, what your home is going to be like when it's their home.
Exactly.
So on the note of like kind of some of the bad things, right? I mean, that turn people off of purchasing a home. You already hit one big one, which is the smells. What else? Give me a couple more.
Okay, so bold color choices.
Okay,
that's
a turn off. Yes.
When we talk about simple painting choices, just like you can be the smelly house, you could also be, and the one with that green wall. Yeah. And accent walls actually used to be a big thing. Wallpaper. If people don't love your wallpaper, it's a pain to change it out.
Total pain. I helped a friend take their wallpaper off one time.
And you regretted it. Are you still friends?
I should get like a VIP pass to heaven after that. Yes.
But it's
hard.
Those are the kinds of things that people just start to think of, and they do some mental accounting of, okay, it's going to cost this much, or it's going to take me this much time. And so again, you want to take, how can we get rid of the knocks against the home and have them focus on all of the best aspects of it?
And so speaking of the best aspects, what are some of those things that really make a home super attractive to a buyer?
A kitchen. If you think about everybody looks at the kitchen.
That's why I love my kitchen.
The kitchen, bathrooms, those are always big features. Also, curb appeal. So landscaping and thinking about how the home looks from the outside.
My husband's big on curb appeal.
And
he always says curb appeal. The house has no curb appeal. That house has curb appeal.
It's sometimes changing, how does your front door look? And people love a good accent front door. You would be surprised, the red door, the blue door, people see it right away and they're like, oh yes.
I like them.
And it's not that expensive. And so there's a lot of things that you can do that can really just up the wow factor, especially because the goal is in the very beginning, how do I get somebody to even come and see my place and think this is a place that they might want to live in?
And right off the bat, so it's not just the inside, because clearly we talk about how important when you go through that door, what that looks like. But it's even pulling up to the house. You know it. Yes. I mean, you do this for a living, but I've bought a house before, and just pulling up, you're already envisioning, you're hoping that when you open that door, it's as nice as you hope it is, because like already from the outside you're like, yeah, I like this. You want it to be so nice on the inside. And the worst is,
I have had moments where we're starting to pull up and somebody's like, ooh, this is not what I expected. Yeah. Before we've even set foot in the house, it's already off the list. And so it's, that one is something a lot of people miss. And especially being in Illinois, we have our fabulous seasons, but if you're on in fall, are your leaves raked? You know, how is your yard looking?
Are your sidewalks all cracked?
Winter, did you salt? Did you shovel? So you don't want a hazard of somebody coming and like slipping in front of your place.
For sure.
There's just so much, and get pictures multiple seasons. So if you are, let's say, listed during winter, that's just the time that worked and you have no leaves on your trees, but it's beautiful the rest of the year. Did you get photos of it when it had leaves, or even you have beautiful colors, beautiful fall foliage? Show that off and get people excited.
So everyone who's listening should absolutely go out and take photos of all your beautiful trees if your leaves are still there.
Yes.
We're getting close now.
Yes.
Just in case, you never know.
Absolutely.
Not because you want to sell today, but maybe 10 years down the road you do, and you happen to get this beautiful picture, you want to use it.
Absolutely.
So Rebecca, I know you're biased because you are in fact a realtor, so this next question might be a little bit, weird, but I know you're my friend, and so you're going to say the truth, okay?
Absolutely.
Should you try to sell, like if you're a good salesperson and you're very organized, does it make sense to try to sell by owner first, or should you always go with a realtor from the beginning?
So the way I always look at it, for most people, our homes are our largest financial asset. When you think about all of the many things that we do and all of the many other places that we trust other people's advice, it is a very risky thing to do by yourself. And what you want to do is, most people don't sell homes that frequently. And so being the expert is a little dicey. Now you can try it. The challenge is, it's not just about did you price it right and did you find somebody to buy it? Because that's really just step one. Like, did I get you interested, and did you put in an offer that I'm okay with the terms? But there are things like the home inspection. There are things, if anybody has a homeowners association, there are all sorts of levels of scrutiny and really continued negotiations that extend beyond that first set. And so it's having somebody to give you the peace of mind of, I've got you covered, I've seen this before, my mentality is always, let's expect for the worst, hope for the best, but if we've prepared for all things, if we prepared for all of these scenarios, then if we do run into any challenges, we've got it, we're ready for it, we already have a plan.
So that makes a ton of sense. What if you are like a prolific realtor like you? I mean, do you still go with another realtor, or do you tend to think, I can do this myself? I mean,
it's so interesting because most real estate professionals will actually bring somebody else in, because the other piece is having a neutral third party, or at least somebody who can dial the temperature down is really important. Like, sure. I know we all love our own homes, just like I didn't see that Post-it note on that door for years.
You miss other stuff.
You miss other things, or when somebody gives you a lowball offer.
And you're emotionally attached to this property.
Because all of a sudden you're like, this buyer is a bad person. They're not a bad person. They don't want to overpay, and they're trying to get a deal. And so, having somebody involved that can really help everybody get, if the buyer wants to buy the home, you want to sell it, and there are terms that everybody's going to be happy with, the person that can help get us to that point is really important. So actually, you'd be surprised how many licensed realtors actually bring in somebody else to help be that third party.
That makes a lot of sense too. So now you're getting to the point where someone's going to make an offer, or you might, have multiple offers. How do you know when is the right time to accept an offer?
Well, there is an old adage, like your first offer is usually your best. Now that's not true 100% of the time, but typically if your property has been exposed to the market, it's been, marketed very well, it's photographed well, you've been well positioned, some of those early offers are the most interested somebody is going to be. Like, one of the challenges, the longer a home is on the market, people start to think something's wrong with it.
Exactly.
And sometimes it was just overpriced, or there were some really bad photos of the kitchen. They should have taken them. It was too dark. It could be any number of things, but typically, time kills all deals. Well, unfortunately, the longer you're on the market, buyer willingness to pay tends to correlate down.
Yeah.
So, but when you get that offer, there's a couple things beyond price that as a seller you should be thinking about. And the beautiful thing is, you can start to set some of what your ideal terms are, and a buyer can choose to meet them or not. So let's say, I have kids, and I don't want us moving in the middle of the school year. So let's say I'm on in the spring market.
Yeah.
I would really prefer not to have to move until June. So I could ask either for a later closing date, or that I can rent back after you purchase until X date. Some of those things might also influence how much I'm willing to take, because now I don't have to go rent another home while we try and find another home.
Move all your stuff twice.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And so those kinds of factors are also important. But it's making sure, can I also even afford to sell at this price point? What is my alternative? If I say this is too low, am I prepared to stay in this home? And if the answer is yes, then that might be, hey, this person right now, not the right,
I'm going to wait
not
for
the right
offer. Yeah, that makes me
but
happy.
also, maybe this isn't the right time for me to sell. And it's not a knee-jerk reaction. You shouldn't do it right away. The other piece is talking to your agent about what's happening with average sale price in your market. Have there been any sales that are changing the offers that you're getting in? Are there any trends like days on market? It was interesting because a normal, healthy, balanced market typically has a couple months of inventory available. And so it was strange because people all of a sudden are like, my home has been listed for 2 days and I don't have any offers. What's wrong?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's normal. That's good. And so also just calibrating your expectations by talking with your realtor about data. What is going on in my market specifically, not in the national news, not even statewide, in this specific market, in this price point, so that I can temper my expectations. And sometimes your first offer is somebody giving you a lowball.
Yeah.
But working with a licensed agent who is really a trained negotiator, who also, just because this is where they're coming in, there's also the emotional, like, I'm not even going to respond to them. Well, if they're serious, see if you can get them to a place that you also would accept those terms.
Sure.
And while you may not like their style, you can find your ideal situation is to move, their ideal situation is to get your home.
Yeah, I got you. That's so stressful. Like when you're just like, how do you know? But I think you kind of know. But this is why having the agent there, who is the unemotional person here,
Yes.
who understands the market, who understands the other, comparative offers that have been made in your neighborhood for similar type homes, can help take some of that emotion out and just help guide you. And so, to your point, I think definitely, I would never want to think about selling my own home. I know people do it, but the level of, there's so many other things in your life that are going on that you definitely don't need to add something that stressful to your bucket of things to do or your list of things to do, when there's people who do it much better and will likely end up getting you as good or much better of a price at the end of the day.
And again, it's not just about what those offer terms are initially and what that offer price is. It's looking at all of the factors and recognizing that it takes a lot to go from contract to close, and there's a lot of things that can happen in between.
A lot of things that can go wrong too. So, and imagine if you don't have experience in those things, you're like, who do I need to ask? And it ends up being more expensive for you, frankly, at the end of the day, if you go your own, I would assume in most cases.
Well, sometimes you can find out, the financing, the buyer, you thought that they had the financing already set up, you had what you believed was enough, and they end up not being able to get the mortgage. But you've already now found a new home for yourself, and you can't have two houses, so what are you going to do? And that's a scary place to be.
Yeah, don't freak out. But yeah, I can see where you'd feel like you're going to. Now, any other tips and tricks sellers should know about before we move on to buyers?
Yes. So again, with sellers, it's really start to emotionally detach from your own home in terms of the photos. All of the things that you love that have made it great for you are not necessarily what's going to make it great for somebody else. But it's not even about if you're selling tomorrow. It's start thinking ahead. Start doing some of the things that you would do. Like, oh, we should totally get new kitchen countertops. Well, then get them now. And look at what's trending, or ask your agent, even if you're not getting ready to sell yet, maybe it's in a year, maybe it's in 2 years, so that you can start to make smart decisions again for that ROI. Because just because it's your personal taste, if this is going to be somebody else's forever home, then start to figure out what is going to appeal to the broadest base of buyers.
For sure. And one last thing before we talk about buying, bathrooms. I feel like bathrooms are key.
Am I wrong
about this?
Kitchens, bathrooms.
Yeah, kitchens and bathrooms, right? I mean, everybody has a kitchen, but a lot of people overlook the importance of having more than one bathroom, right? So I feel like the more bathrooms you have, the more awesome that house seems to me.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody complain that there were too many bathrooms in a home. I don't think that's a problem anyone has ever had ever.
No, and then especially if you have kids, it's like no one wants to be competing for the bathroom.
Exactly. Well, and
so kitchens and bathrooms.
Kitchens, bathrooms, and curb appeal.
Curb appeal. All right, kitchens, bathrooms, curb appeal. That's trips, really important things that sellers need to be thinking about.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about buying. So I guess the first thing is figuring out how much house you can afford. And sometimes people don't take the time to start correctly by thinking that they can buy a house that's a lot more than what they can actually afford to buy. So how do you figure out what that sweet spot is?
Well, it's talking to a lender sooner rather than later.
So it's beneficial to get pre-approved before you even begin house hunting?
And here's a pre-approval does two things. Number one, it assesses credit worthiness, because you may have something on there that you didn't realize, or you're really close to a threshold where you might get a much more favorable interest rate
if you just
by going up a couple points.
A little bit, yes.
And so you want to know that early, because sometimes that takes time, and not necessarily an eternity,
Sure.
but it gives you a window of, if this, then that, great, I'm going to start doing some of these things now.
There are things you can do to actually increase your credit a little bit. I mean, it's hard to do things quickly that can raise it a lot, but there are some moves that you can make in a short amount of time, within a few months, that'll up your credit score, maybe just enough to get you the most favorable rates.
Exactly. And then there's other things like maybe it's not where you need it to be, or you have not had as much work experience, that you're a first-time buyer. You want to start looking at, okay, do I need to get a cosigner on the loan? What kind of down payment options are available to me? Because it's not just about how much total is the price, it's how much am I going to put in as a down payment?
Mm-hmm.
What do my payments look like? And understanding that it's not just the purchase price. It's your monthly payment is going to be, of course, mortgage, which is principal and interest.
Property taxes,
if there's a homeowners association, all of those costs that come along with owning the home that you want to factor in. And also, just because you're pre-approved for a certain amount, doesn't necessarily mean that's how much you should spend either. And so really talking through, here's what my comfort level is for all-in purchasing, and that also will help that if rates go up or down, that may mean your purchase price is shifting a little bit one way or the other. And so really calibrating for that. The other hard thing, if you start looking and you have the wrong number in your head, it is really painful to suddenly think, I was buying a $500,000 house and now I'm buying a $300,000 house, because they're two different things. And you were deciding between, one set of opportunities, and it's hard to get yourself rallied back up and excited.
Yeah.
Also, you don't want to put in an offer, get accepted, feel all the way down this road, and then find out, no, you weren't able to do it after all.
And usually you can't do it because you actually thought you were better off financially than you in fact are.
Exactly, and sometimes it's simple things. So this is a big one. File your taxes early. If you're thinking about it now, one of the things that as soon as the year turns, that in order to get your mortgage, they're going to need you to have your taxes paid. They're going to need bank statements. They're going to ask you for everything, quite frankly, and they'll ask you 3 different times. They want to see, pay stubs. They want to understand, who you are, that you're able to pay, and your sources of income.
So if you're like in April and you still haven't done your taxes, but you're trying to buy, that could really hurt you then. So if you know you're going to be looking for a house in February, March, April, you should absolutely do your tax returns first chance you get.
Absolutely. And although there might be the occasional person that's like really excited about doing their taxes, that is, for I think the vast majority of the world, we have a million things on our to-do list, and that's one of the things that we'll get to.
Yeah.
If this is something you're thinking about doing, you want to buy a home, do not leave that to later on your list. Handle it soon.
That's awesome. I've never heard anybody give that bit of advice, but it makes perfect sense. So thank you for that. Now, we talked about should you go it alone in terms of selling your home versus getting a realtor, but the same is true on the buyer side, right? So should you try to save a few bucks and go it on your own, or should you always get a realtor when looking to purchase a home?
Well, obviously, you know where my thoughts are.
I know where you are.
But
I'm asking, as your friend,
the
honest advice.
Here's the same answer, though, is this is your largest financial investment. Anybody can look at stock prices. And I could open up a portfolio on Robinhood, and I'm sure we've all seen there's the story of sometimes people who just lose their shorts. And those are sometimes smaller plays, but there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. And so most people, if they're serious about investing, if you think about your 401k, if you think about, whatever it is that you do to protect your wealth for now and into the future, to plan for retirement, to take care of your family, we get experts, doctors. I can go on WebMD and I can say, hey, I'm not feeling so good. To me, WebMD is telling me, when is it time to call my doctor? What can I do in the meantime? And so I think that there's a lot of great information out there on the internet about how to be a savvy buyer. there's also a lot of misinformation.
Sure, just like with the medical stuff. Honestly, you can get a pimple and you're like, what is this? It's brain tumor, right?
Oh,
so like,
yes.
You don't want to actually
I have a friend who believes they have the plague. Everything they look at like the plague,
like,
it's plague.
Whatever it is, I have a cut in my hand. Oh, you have gangrene. No, you don't. So, but like the same is true you're saying for this.
Exactly.
You have a lot of experts who aren't really giving you perhaps the best advice.
Now, the beauty of it is it's great to have this information. Like at 2 a.m, I was glad you never called me at 2 a.m. when you were looking for a place, because just because you're up and thinking about it, you have access to resources. You can start to think through different neighborhoods you're looking at, or okay, what is my perfect bathroom tile finish level?
Sure.
Those kinds of things are great. But really having somebody guide you through the process and helping you be smart about it, and helping you. I had a home inspection once where during the home inspection, and the home inspector came over to us, and it looked new, it looked beautiful. And he looked at me and said, "It's a lemon." And I remember looking at my clients and saying, we should walk away from this one. The things that he was saying about the condition of the home were not readily apparent. And you need somebody in your corner, especially because when you've decided you're putting in an offer and you love it and you want to buy it and it's everything about it is perfect, there's sometimes like a tendency to make these compromises of well, maybe it's not that bad.
Maybe it's not that bad. Yes.
And being able to have somebody who can be that smart, neutral party, because the best agents aren't just looking for you to do one deal with them. They want to be a realtor for life.
For sure. And they want you to recommend them to other people, of course.
And whether or not you're maybe you moved into your forever home, you build a relationship where when you have ideas like, I'm thinking of renovating my kitchen, whether or not you're going to sell in the future, they can tell you about what's trending. They can give you great resources. And so it's also looking at that relationship not as just a finite window of time, but how am I going to have somebody who, okay, I realize I have a tree that got damaged during the storm. I need to take it down.
Yeah.
We've got to move it.
Who do you know?
Exactly.
Totally.
And so that person, they're not going to come cut down your tree. However,
they're going to refer you to somebody who's trustworthy and
Exactly.
who's cut down other people's trees and done a great job.
Exactly.
And by the way, I feel like I bought my forever home with David, but I found my forever friend because I love you so much.
Feel like
I got to come in for a hug. Yes. Awesome. All right. So, okay, what if you are relocating? How do you start that search?
Yes.
Because that's stressful too, right? And by the way, I would never want to buy a house without a realtor. So I can just say from personal experience, again, you've got your life to live, kids to raise, job to go to. Let someone else worry about the hard stuff. You can Google all day long or, ask ChatGPT stuff, but that should all just be so that you can ask more informed questions of your realtor.
Absolutely.
Not so that you actually do the transaction itself. So
Absolutely.
I know I probably asked you a ton of questions back in the day, and we actually looked at several houses because we thought, oh, this one, I remember the one in Saginaw. I still think of that house because it was a ranch, but it needed a lot of work on new windows, and it definitely needed a new kitchen because I don't know if you remember, you've seen so many properties, but that was like in the 70s or something. The bathrooms were still really old.
Oh, yes.
And we had convinced ourselves, oh, it'll be fun to do these projects together as a couple, and so we were so close.
With a 1-year-old.
It was crazy, I know. And you're like, maybe not, but you gave us great advice. And then when we saw the house on Mason, which I call Mason Love, because I loved it, the second I saw it, that was it. We knew, okay, we're definitely not going to do that. We're going to do this house, and very happy. But having you there to help guide us, answer questions, make us just feel really confident about the choice that we ultimately made. It was definitely the right choice. And then I also got a forever friend from it. Is really, really special. But I do recommend to people that they don't go it alone. You're there to be, yes, you're going to get a commission for it, but well earned, well deserved. And, if I had to do it all over again in a heartbeat, it would be the same thing, which is why I've recommended you to other people, because once you meet somebody who makes you feel like you're part of their family in finding that home, I think that's when you know you have a really great realtor.
Well, and that's so much a part of it. The best agents are part of the community. They are telling you, and when you're relocating too, you want somebody who is that community expert, because if you don't know where you're going, it's thinking about and answering questions about what is ultimately important for you of where you're going to be living.
For
For me, I love restaurants, so I need to be in very close proximity to phenomenal food.
Yeah,
But
walking distance.
Exactly.
For you.
But for people who love walking, for people who love hiking, biking, they want bike trails. Whatever it is that makes your heart sing, conveying that to the person who's going to help you get where you're going to go, because a home is so much more than just the foundation and bricks. It's really about where it is. The old adage, location, location, location. Well, when you're relocating, understanding where you're going to go and why is really important. So even if some of it is from a distance, spending time and actually walking around a community or driving around outside of the showings that you're doing is going to be really important, because sometimes you're coming in, I mentioned inventory is really down. There's not necessarily all of the options. If you're not ready to do something today, those same homes might not be available next time you're back in town.
Sure.
But the first time you visit a place should be so much more about where you are than a specific set of homes.
Yeah.
And it's, what would it be like to live here? Where will I go have lunch? Where will my dry cleaners be? Where will I get coffee?
Where's my coffee shop? Yeah,
exactly. If you have a dog, where am I going to walk my dog? Is there a great dog park nearby?
Or the church, is it walking distance?
Exactly.
Where do we go to, like one of the things we did, there's this restaurant.
Schools.
Yeah, on the corner of Irving and Austin called the Burgundy, and it's like an old school diner. And the church, St. Pascal's, is right down the street from that. And I remember telling my husband, this will be our church, and then this will be our family's, after church diner, right? We want to have this tradition that you can set up, and it's all walking distance literally from our house. And so it's you start to drive around the neighborhood, see where the neighborhood school would be at. Is this going to be something our son can walk to? I mean, he wasn't even a year old, so you're imagining the future. And so you should do that well before you decide to buy that house, no doubt.
Here's the funny thing. So anyone who's been wedding dress shopping will know there's a million dresses, and there's a bunch that will look great on any bride. And then there's one, or there's maybe a couple that suddenly it's this feels like it.
Speak to you.
And the same is true for homes. And there's not just one perfect home for anybody.
Right.
But there are trends or places or things that will make it right if it's the right time, the right price, and the right location.
Then you say yes to the dress.
Say yes to the dress.
So you can say yes to the house.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you should start a show called Yes to the House. Say yes to the house. Anyway, okay, so you fall in love with this house. We want to say yes to the house. You absolutely have to get it inspected.
Yes.
Do not skip the inspection.
I know. I'm so glad to hear you say that, because even when you buy something that is new construction, that's actually the misnomer. A lot of people think, oh, it's new, it's going to be perfect. What you didn't know is they didn't actually finish installing the plumbing the right way, and so all of a sudden the water is leaking because no one's ever lived in it, so no one found out something was wrong.
Right.
Things also sometimes break, but even if nothing is wrong, which actually never happens, you still can at least get an assessment. How old is the furnace? And they're going to give ranges. Sure. And it will say, it is X number of years old, and it is, this is generally the range for a furnace's useful life.
Yes.
And you can do things like, hey, I'm going to get a home warranty to protect myself so that if anything happens later on, I am prepared. It's also, I understand the costs that are going to come into me owning this in the long term. We talked about your mortgage payment and your taxes, but also there are home upkeep costs that you want to understand.
Sure.
And so it's really more about eyes wide open, even if it's being sold as is. So sellers can always opt to do an as is sale. They'll typically tell you up front, especially in an estate sale, we see this very frequently. You still get the inspection, because even if they are not going to give you funds to offset something that's wrong,
which is what happens in it as is. They're take it as it is, get your inspection, no matter what the inspection finds, this is still the bottom, this is the price, and that's it.
But the nice thing is you can walk away, or if you still want to buy it, great, you can move forward, but you're going in eyes wide open, understanding what this means. Again, as much as we love our homes, they are also a financial investment, and so it's really just about, let's make sure I'm a smart investor and know what I'm actually getting into.
Sure. And then so we talked about pipes that you can't see, things like that. What other things should people be looking for specifically when they're doing that walkthrough in a home? And what are those red flags that people should be looking at when looking at a home that they might be considering buying?
Okay, so foundation. The foundation, especially if you have a basement.
Basements for sure, right?
You want to look at that.
Cracks.
Water, any kind of water intrusion.
And if you don't see water, you should be looking for lines where water, we saw some.
Exactly.
Yeah, in one of the neighborhoods that we went to.
Look at, because water's tricky. It can find a way in, and once it's there, it can mean a couple of things. And sometimes, of course, do we need to get mold? Do we need to get, and there's, in addition to the property inspection itself, understanding, are you in a floodplain? Do you want a radon inspection? Is this a high radon zone? Depending on the age of the house, there's a lead-based paint disclosure. And is that something, especially if you have young children, pets, is that something that you want to get looked at? And so it's really helpful context for the things to watch out for, but the things that to me are the biggest eyebrow raisers, things about cracks, foundation, and water. And it's not always the end-all be-all, but they're usually hey, let's get a follow-up opinion. And so if I see something's wrong, having a specialist come out and make their professional opinion. Because again, a home inspector is not the best person for everything. It's kind of like when you have something wrong with you, you go to your primary care doctor, but then you go to the specialist that they're referring you to because they know enough, but you want to get somebody who's really an expert in that space. And so then understanding, is it really a problem? And if it is, how much is it going to take to fix it?
Yep. So when you're in a home, do you ever is it obnoxious, but do you ever go and open up all the water, in the bathrooms, make sure it's all working, in the shower, turn the shower head on? So
actually that is...
Because water pressure is a real thing.
Yes.
People don't think about this stuff, but you walk in and it's like
water pressure
trickle out of the shower. It looks amazing, but then no water comes out of it.
There's nothing more disappointing than being in a hotel.
100%.
Beautiful bathroom, you turn it on, and you're wondering if anything's actually happening.
My water bottle would have more water pressure,
Exactly. So, yes, but typically the inspector is doing it. So the way that I love a lot of home inspectors doing their home inspection, it's hard as a buyer because there is nothing worse. You just have paid what you know is top dollar for this place, because if you could have gotten it for less, you would have. And you have somebody who's going to write this report of all of the things that are wrong with this home that you love, and you're going to have this oh my gosh moment. Yeah. And there's even you might want to kind of hover and see what are they doing. I always like to give inspectors space. Sit at the kitchen table, have your phone, do some work, play some games, scroll Instagram, whatever you want to do. But typically they'll start to take the buyers through floor by floor. And a couple things that can be helpful. So they'll give you a very detailed report, and they will have turned on the water, and they will tell you if something seems amiss. But great home inspectors, like a great real estate professional, they're going to also show you how you're going to live in the home. Okay, here's where your circuit breaker is, here's your sump pump, and especially if it's your first time purchase or you've been in a condo and now you're going into a house, they can help educate you both in that moment but also after the fact once you've moved in of here's how this works. That can be a really helpful part of the process.
And so you're in this ecosystem where remember how we talked about once you buy the house and you still remain friends with your realtor, and then if something happens, you call your realtor.
Absolutely.
Because they might know who the person is that is super dependable. And
exactly.
So if I try to go on my own and I look up building inspectors, I might not get a really great building inspector, but if you go through a realtor, they have relationships that are built on trust and actual experience, and
absolutely.
People who are going to give it to you straight and aren't giving you a bad inspection. Right?
You don't necessarily want the sponsored ad. You want the real deal.
Exactly. Okay, so now after submitting an offer, you hear about people getting into these bidding wars.
Yes.
Or even paying in cash. Walk us through that.
Yes. Okay, so the thing I will say for those of you who are I can't pay cash for a home, how am I going to compete? There are some really great mortgage programs out there that pre-approval, there's actually a next level pre-approval. So one of the companies that we do a lot of work with has a program called Power Bid, and they basically have done a lot of the underwriting. So the way a realtor will position it is, hey, this GRA approval is as good as cash. We can compete, because the reason a seller is going to opt for cash is they don't want the mortgage to fall through. They want to know, price is important, but they are risk averse.
Yeah, they're going to get paid. That's what they care about.
So if you can come in with a very strong pre-approval, and even if you can do that much more and do the automated underwriting, there's all these things that are done so that the seller can have peace of mind, you can better compete. So the sooner you have that pre-approval, the better.
The better.
But beyond that, it's also, what are the terms that the seller is looking for? And it's not just about price. So just like I mentioned, they want to wait until the end of the school year, but they might want to close right away because they don't want the risk of the deal falling through. Great, you close, you can rent back from me. This is the move out date. There's parts like that, elements of that you can structure into the deal. Now, there is something that we see sometimes. It's called an escalation clause. And I will tell you, sellers either love it or hate it. Agents either love it or hate it. So before you use one, you want to find out, how does the listing agent and the seller feel about an escalation clause? And what an escalation clause is, okay, I don't know, there's a million of their offers going on. We can't get information on what they're all willing to do. We can say, hey seller, we reserve the right. I'm going to give you all the terms you asked for, and I will agree to beat your best bid by $5,000, maybe up to a certain price, or maybe not even up to the certain price. I reserve the right to be able to do this. And so the seller might look and go, well, great, this offer is worth $5,000 more. Now, sometimes people are like, well, that's not fair. They should have just put the number down that they were willing to offer. So you want to get a sense for where that is. And again, as a buyer, your protection can be, I can put up to a certain limit. And in Illinois, we're also an attorney state. And so in many parts of the state, not all, but many parts, there's an attorney involved in the transaction who can also vet whether or not the contract as it's structured was a smart move for the buyer and seller, if there's concerns, and if somebody should pull out of the deal.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. Wow. It's super stressful. I know when we bought our house, we looked at it and we wanted to put an offer on it that day. Do you remember?
I do.
And then there was a competing offer. Like on the I think we saw it the day after it went on the market.
And sometimes that happens.
But we could never afford to pay it in cash. We just got lucky, which brings me to kind of one of my last points here, which is always be nice.
Yes.
That's something we didn't talk about, because you are going to have competing offers. You don't know who the seller is, but just remember that person loved their home.
Yes.
And so if you're going to make an offer that is less than what they want, which happens many, many times, you shouldn't do it from a place of being greedy or stingy. You should do it because that's what you can, afford, and you're trying to there's other costs that you have to build into that, right? And so you always want to give a fair offer as your first offer. You don't want to just purposely go in low. But there's always the potential that someone's going to offer more, right? And then you get into this bidding war. So just being kind and being nice to the people on the other side of the transaction who you don't see, but you still have these interactions, your realtor, to be nice.
Your agent needs to have a great reputation as well.
Exactly. That is sometimes the difference, in that people, because they have an emotional attachment, are going to want their home to go to a good person.
Absolutely.
I think that almost more so than the money sometimes. It's you can offer me more money, but if I don't like you and I think you were really rude and you were not fun to work with through this thing, I might love my neighbors, and I might not want my neighbors to end up having Mrs. Hatchet or whatever in in their backyard or front yard, or be their neighbor. So I think there's a lot that goes into being kind. That's another asset that you bring to the table.
Well, and it's even, if you're thinking about and talking about all of the things that are wrong, if I write an offer and I say, well, this is wrong and this is wrong, that seller loves that home. Yeah. And so what you might be signaling to them unintentionally is that you're going to be difficult to work with. And again, remember, it's not just do we get an accepted offer. We still have a long road before that finish line.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you don't get it right away, don't be discouraged. Your agent can say, hey, listing agent, seller, please keep us posted if anything should happen, because sometimes that other buyer got cold feet.
Yeah, or
they got caught up in the bidding wars.
Or something.
Or they start asking for ridiculous things. They're like, oh, no, we offered you $10,000 over asking, but we're asking $30,000 for the roof that you weren't offering. And so the math sometimes doesn't make sense. The other important thing, though, and I would be remiss if I didn't say this, it's sometimes easy to get caught up in those moments. And so going into those situations, having an understanding of the market and of where you want to go. And, I would, when there's flash sales, or even you're at the checkout at the supermarket, like so often you find like you bought that extra thing that you didn't really mean to, where you just got caught up. And so I would always ask myself, and I would encourage my clients to ask these questions. When you're in a home showing, can I envision myself living here? Yes. If you can't say yes to that, like with a hard pass. Can I imagine myself making an offer? Because renting and owning are two different things. And okay, can I imagine myself making an offer? Can I imagine myself not necessarily living there? Maybe it is living there. Can I imagine 7 to 10 years from now still owning this property? And if you can't say yes to all three of those, then that's probably not the place you should be putting an offer in on. And when it is, you have to ask yourself, okay, if it's multiple offer, how much am I willing to pay? If I found out, maybe it's $150,000, and if I found out it went for $153,000, would I be upset that I lost it? How about $155,000? And sometimes there's I know exactly, I know exactly where I'm okay being, and you have to make peace with yourself that this is the number based on everything we're seeing in the market. I don't want to overpay. I don't want to, be the fool on the block. And then you can sleep better at night. So if you don't get that first home, if there's a really competitive market, especially if inventory is low, that you're doing right by yourself.
For sure. And then let's to kind of wrap this up, I'm going to have one more thing I'm going to add as a question to you. And that is, you hear this saying that you never want to buy the most expensive house on the block, right? You want to buy the cheapest house on the block. But I would argue that if you can see yourself living in that house for a long period of time, don't worry about the price, assuming that it still falls within your budget and that the neighborhood itself is rising in value, right? Like you have to be able to see past the immediate sticker price and look at what it's going to look like, 10, 15 years down the road.
And that's so much about why you want to have somebody who is that neighborhood and community expert who can tell you what stores are coming in, what planned development projects are happening, are there any companies coming into town? So you can understand, maybe it's the most expensive home on the block today, but are we expecting to see growth?
Yeah, and it might not be, 5 years down the road. That might just help bring up the values of the other properties, and then your home, when you are ready to sell it, if in fact you do want to someday, is going to be worth a lot more. Not to mention that if you do love that home and you have kids in that home, and maybe that's a property then that becomes a property for your children, right? So, but it's worth so much more than when you first bought it. So I think you have to be able to look past the initial sticker shock and not just always believe all those adages out there, because they're not always right.
They're not always right, and is the location the right place for you? Can you imagine yourself being here? Does this check the boxes? And you want it to check all of the needs and as many of the wants as possible.
For sure, but I do think we should follow the wise words of Rebecca Thomson and marry the house, but date the rate.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right, so thank you, Rebecca, so much for your time today. And, I do hope that everyone feels a little more prepared if they are looking to sell or buy a home in the near future. Now, everyone deserves to find their own dream home. I feel like we found ours, thanks to you, Rebecca. And while interest rates may be putting a damper on your plans, it's never too early to start getting prepared. We will see you next time for another episode of the Mendoza Podcast. Thanks for joining us, Rebecca.
Oh, thanks for having me.